My name is Deborah. I'm 26, a freelance writer, and recently, my now ex-boyfriend and his cousin conspired with my landlady to kick me out of the apartment I had rented for 4 years. But what I did after that, it left them speechless. After my National Youth Service ended in March 2021, I decided to stay back in Ibadan, where I served. There were 2 reasons for that. One, it was close to Lagos, where 2 of my siblings and many relatives lived. And 2, I didn't want to return to Calabar to live with my parents. I wanted independence, and I could afford it. Freelancing paid me well enough to live comfortably and even send money home every month. Before I passed out of service, I started searching for accommodation. I wanted a place close to major areas in Ibadan, but things didn't go exactly as planned. The agent I eventually met, who later became my landlord, told me he had a house still under development. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't too far from what I was looking for. He was honest, said there were a few things he hadn't completed that might discourage me. I liked his honesty, so I decided to check the place out. It was a 2-story building. He and his family lived downstairs, which was fully completed, while the upstairs where I would be staying was about 80% done, tiled and painted, but with no window glass and no water system. He said once it was finished, the rent would be 500,000 naira, but since it wasn't done yet, he could let me have it for 400,000 naira if I could fix the remaining parts myself. He also promised to refund me gradually. At first, I wasn't comfortable with that arrangement, so I told him I would think about it. A week later, he called again and said he was ready to draw up an agreement to prove he was serious. The truth was, I liked the place and I needed accommodation urgently because I was about to pass out of service, so I agreed. He drafted the agreement, we both signed it, and my friend, a newly called lawyer, witnessed it. It was a done deal. That arrangement meant I couldn't immediately buy furniture, since most of my savings went into fixing windows and installing a water tank system for my flat. By December 2021, everything was finally done. I started furnishing the place in early 2022, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly settled. Then, around June, I got a message from Uche. He was someone I had been getting serious with before he passed out of service. He was in the batch before mine. We had lost touch after his passing out, but that June, we started talking again. He asked how I was doing and told me about life in Lagos, where he had moved after service to pursue business. He complained about how hard it was, how even earning 250,000 naira a month barely covered rent and food. I felt for him, but I didn't tell him that I made between 450 and 750,000 naira monthly from freelancing. He already knew I was doing okay. He'd seen pictures of my apartment, and I guess that said enough. He asked if I could teach him how to freelance, but I refused. Not out of pride, but because I'm not a good teacher, even though I'm good at what I do. He already had coding skills, and I knew that could make him serious money if he brushed up on them. Thankfully, my brother trained people in coding, so I secretly paid my brother to train Uche, though I lied and said it was a friend asking for a favor, because my brother wouldn't have accepted money from me to train a man he didn't know. Uche took the training seriously. We kept in touch. By May 2023, he told me he wanted to visit Ibadan. He was already done with his training and had gotten a few gigs. We had been chatting for nearly a year, and it felt right. When he came, it was explosive. We clicked immediately. He stayed 2 weeks and left, and 2 months later, he asked if he could come back, this time to stay temporarily for 3 months while focusing on his coding gigs. He had quit his job at a drug company and didn't want to renew his rent since his savings were small. I agreed. I had space, and honestly, I didn't mind. He moved in that August, and for the first few months, it was peaceful. He was neat, cooked well, and helped around. His gig started paying, and he contributed financially, though I was already handling the bills comfortably. But soon, I noticed he relaxed, cleaned less, helped less. It wasn't unbearable, but I decided to hire a cleaner who came twice a week for 40,000 naira monthly. Then came January 2024, the month I made the worst decision of that year. He begged me to let his cousin Judith stay with us for her 1-year internship in Ibadan. Her parents lived in Lagos and she had to sort her own accommodation. I hesitated. I didn't want another person in my space, especially since I valued my peace. But he sweet-talked me, called her my sister-in-law, made it sound like family helping family. I agreed. I wish I hadn't.
Judith moved in that February. The first month, she acted like an angel, chatty, cheerful, and overly inquisitive. But I noticed her questions were too personal. When I didn't feel like answering, she'd press harder. When I told her I wasn't comfortable talking about something, her expression changed. Something about her didn't sit right with me. I got a lot of red flag energy from her. By April, I bought myself a small Toyota Vitz after months of saving. I love compact cars. They fit me and my lifestyle. When I brought it home, Uche wasn't particularly excited. He said a Corolla would have been a better choice for Nigerian roads. I brushed it off. But Judith's reaction bothered me more. She was pretending to be happy, but I often caught her staring at me strangely. Her attitude around the house had also changed. She stopped helping with chores, left messes around, and acted like the cleaner was her maid. The cleaner complained that Judith was forcing her to wash her clothes, something outside her job description. When I confronted her, she didn't exactly deny it. And when Uche heard about it later, she lied, making herself look like the victim. From then on, things became tense between Uche and me. He felt like I was siding with an outsider over family. We'd argue during the day and go to bed in silence at night. One week, I traveled to Lagos to visit my brothers. When I returned, I noticed some of my things were missing. My perfume level had dropped, a bottle was also gone, and a few pieces of jewelry too. Then not long after, I saw Judith walk into the house that evening, wearing my Nike sneakers, gold wristwatch, wig, and sunglasses. She smiled and said, Auntie, I borrowed some of your things today. I hope you don't mind. I stood there speechless, borrowed. Without asking, I told her to remove everything, clean them, and return them immediately. When Uche came home later, I told him what happened. He tried to calm me down and even defended her, saying I was overreacting. That was the first time I saw the gaslighting clearly. He said he only permitted her to use one handbag, not all the other things I mentioned. I dropped the matter to avoid further argument, but I was angry. The next morning, I woke up late to the sound of my car outside. When I looked out the window, I saw Judith driving into the compound, with Uche in the passenger seat. I was frozen. It's like they found new ways of pissing me off each day. When they walked in laughing, carrying bags of pastries, Uche smiled and said, "Hey baby, we went to buy fruit bread so I can make breakfast for you." Judith greeted me casually. I looked at both of them and asked quietly, why was she driving my car? He said, I was just teaching her how to drive. With my car? I asked. He shrugged, said he didn't mean to upset me, he just wanted to show her a few things. Apparently, they'd been practicing for a week already, the week I had gone to visit my brothers. I couldn't believe it. My car, my house, my things, and I wasn't consulted. I told him firmly, don't ever use my car for that again. If she wants to learn, register her in a driving school. They exchanged glances, as if I was being unreasonable. I walked away. That night, I told him clearly that I wanted Ifeoma out. It had been 6 chaotic months. The cleaner had quit, the house felt tense, and I was constantly defending myself in my own home. He begged me to allow her to stay until her internship ended in March the following year. I reluctantly agreed I shouldn't have, but I could feel the shift. Uchi's family had started acting cold towards me. When he called them on speaker and invited me to say hi, they'd respond dryly or avoid speaking to me. I knew Judith must have said things about me. No one told me what, but I could feel it. Every day felt like walking through a silent war zone. Uche and Judith on one side, me on the other. By September, I told him I wanted to move back into my own room and that he should tell his cousin to vacate my room. I was tired of sharing a room with a man who clearly saw me as a problem. I needed my privacy and peace. I also told him I didn't want him to contribute to the next rent. From February 15th, 2025, when the lease expired, I wanted full control of my apartment again. That was my polite way of saying, it's time to go. But instead of preparing to leave, they plotted behind my back. In November, Uche handed me a letter he and the landlady drafted together. It said the owners of the house were no longer interested in renewing my rent after it expired, and that I should make alternate plans. I was shocked. So that was their plan all along, to gang up with the landlady and force me out. That same evening, I knocked on the landlady's door. No one answered, even though I could hear them inside. I wasn't surprised. She had been avoiding me for weeks. Her husband, my landlord, had been in a vegetative state since an accident the previous year, and she'd been handling everything. I realized she must have struck a deal with them. The next few weeks were unbearable. The landlady ignored me, her children avoided me, and Uche and Judith walked around like they owned the place. When I tried to involve the police, they asked if Uche had contributed to the rent. I said yes, and they told me I couldn't evict him. That was when I stopped fighting. Not because I lost, but because I started planning my own way out, my way. By the end of November, I quietly started looking for a new apartment while informing my brothers and cousins about everything. I found a bigger, better apartment, 3 bedrooms, 800,000 naira per year. Expensive, yes, but I loved big spaces, and I needed 1 room for my fashion business, which I was planning to start. I didn't tell anyone. Then I waited. On January 31st, I hired a truck and packed everything I owned. Furniture, appliances, curtains, everything. Uche stood and watched. He couldn't say a word because he knew everything in that house belonged to me. Even the bed he was sleeping on. I packed it all. I had no use for that bed, so I donated it to a woman who needed it more. He could keep the empty house he fought for. But I wasn't done. My lease was to end on the 15th of February, and I knew that the water system and iron doors were my investment. The landlord had agreed to refund me over time, but with his condition, that never happened. So on February 12th, I returned with the police and a plumber. I showed them the agreement I signed with the landlord years ago. The police allowed me to disconnect the water tank and remove the pipes. The landlady was shocked, her sons angry, but there was nothing they could do. Everything was properly documented. Uche tried to protest. He said if I was taking the tank, I should refund the money he had just spent refilling the tank of water. I laughed, transferred 12,000 naira to him on the spot, and continued supervising the plumber. He was embarrassed, but I stayed calm. That water tank, my iron doors, my window frames, they were all going with me, but not at once. I wanted my exits to be painful. I wanted them to feel the wrath of my anger since they wanted to play a fast one on me. On February 15th, I returned one last time, this time with my brothers, 2 workmen and police officers. The landlady tried to lock us out of the compound, but the officers warned her they'd call backup if she interfered. She backed off. Uche opened the door quietly. He looked defeated. I walked in and pointed out the fixtures I had installed. My workmen removed the windows, removed the iron door, and loaded everything onto the truck, while my brothers and the policemen supervised. Uche just sat on the floor watching. I didn't say a word to him. Judith stood in a corner, head down. Shame had finally caught up. By the time we were done, the house looked bare. If they wanted it, they could have it, without my sweat in it. I left silently, and that was it. An hour later, Uche called me. I blocked him. Let his family help him now. He had made his choice. He drove me to this resolution. My brothers jokingly said I was ruthless. Maybe I was, but I see it differently. I just took back what was mine. I built that space to fit my comfort. They tried to use manipulation and betrayal to steal it from me, so I showed them, quietly, that I wasn't someone they could toy with. Justice doesn't always come from shouting or fighting. Sometimes,
It comes from calmness, planning, and receipts. I didn't have to humiliate anyone. I just let the truth and the law speak for me. I now live in a new apartment, peaceful, comfortable, mine again. I started my small fashion business, still freelancing, still growing. And if there's one lesson I learned, it's this. Kindness should have boundaries. Because when people see that your heart is open, they sometimes think it's empty. Wow, that was something. I kind of respect Deborah's calm revenge. She handled it smartly. Personally, I don't believe anyone should control you when it comes to your hard-earned money or investment. But I want to know what you think. Was Deborah right, or did she take it too far? Drop your opinion in the comments below.